Let's go! LSU fans, today we are going to predict the times that each game will actually kick off. We got some big information today for the start times for the 3 first weeks of the season. What I want you to do, and I really want you to think about this, comment down below, which time do you like the best when it comes to LSU kickoffs? And I'm not talking about what time you want the games to start if you're actually going to the game, because, look, most of you prefer a night game in Tiger Stadium. I'm just saying in general, if you're watching on TV, what time do you prefer the games to start? Now, I'm going to give you an LSU perspective on this today because with the Mississippi State game officially being set for 11 a.m., how many more 11 a.m. kickoffs could you expect? We're going to go through, and I'm going to give you my best educated guesses for which time each game is going to start. Now, what do we know about 11 a.m. kickoffs? Well, LSU was probably amongst the nation's lowest 11 a.m. kickoff teams. Previous to this one versus Tennessee, since 2018, LSU had only played 6 11 a.m. kickoffs. Let me repeat, only 6 over a 40-ish week span. So it is scarce. And something else to keep in mind is just a few years ago when LSU went to Mississippi State, that game was also an 11 a.m. kickoff, which of course turned out to be a W. Stuff can be very confusing, so I'm going to give you how all of this works very briefly. So the first 3 weeks of the season every year is scheduled early in the spring. So that's why these first 3 weeks are already set. But during the year, the television networks don't pick a start time for each matchup until 2 weeks prior the actual game starting. So CBS gets the first choice of what game they want for that week, and that game will be played at 2:30 p.m. outside of a double header that they do twice during the season. More on that coming up. But at 2:30, CBS picks their game, and then ESPN elects what gets played at what time. So a lot of the games are played at 11 a.m., and the rest of the games are either played at 5, 6, and sometimes 7 and 8 p.m. So let's get into it. Let's go. Boom, I'm looking at you. Yes, you. Go on ahead, join the PHL Patreon because you get access to extra film studies, Discord, and this is from Skipper, who says he hates 11 a.m. kickoff. So hopefully we don't have many more, especially at home, the rest of the season. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you projections for this upcoming season. I am also going to give you what I believe would be the best start time for LSU. And quite simply put, you want your home games to be at 6 p.m. Saturday night at Death Valley. The fans love it. The players love it. And it's just good for everybody involved. I don't think visiting fans want the Saturday night in Death Valley experience. I think Arkansas fans are going to get that. I do think that this game will be a 6 p.m. kickoff. I think they're going to relegate some of these smaller SEC matchups for the 11 a.m. game. Yes, you do have to worry about this Auburn Texas A&M game, potentially pushing you down to 11 a.m. You could see that. The reason why I don't think this will be a CBS 2:30 kick is Alabama. They played their first 3 weeks on ESPN, and Alabama is still the biggest draw in the SEC, especially if you just look at total viewers from 2016 to 2022. You also get the sexy Ole Miss thing. Ole Miss, of course, has upset Alabama quite a bit during the Saban tenure, more so than most SEC schools. So I expect the Lane Kiffin, Nick Saban show to be the CBS 2:30, and I expect LSU Arkansas to be the 6 p.m. game. All right, so now we get to week 5. In just a second, I'm going to tell you why you want this LSU Ole Miss game to be played during the day, but I could see this one actually be the CBS 2:30. I'm actually going to pick this game as a CBS 2:30. I could see Texas A&M and Arkansas, that game being in Jerry World. That game has been a CBS 2:30 in the past. But I do think LSU Ole Miss will be the CBS 2:30 for that week. Nobody wants Alabama and Mississippi State because Alabama does blow them out every year. Georgia and Auburn, that could be it, but Georgia will have already played on CBS in week 3 and Alabama the week before. So now we jump to week 6, and there's going to be a lot of data thrown your way right here because this is the 1 week you want to avoid at 11 a.m. kickoff. And to be honest, the Ole Miss game being a day game would be a massive victory for LSU. Now, this is going to be a lot of information heading your way because I've been looking at this schedule all day. So strap in, and all of this is going to point to why you want the LSU Ole Miss game in week 5 to be during the day. So Ole Miss's schedule is a juxtaposition of their schedule from last year where they had the softest 7-0 start we probably have ever seen in the SEC because their schedule was toilet paper. Now, this year, it's the opposite. In week 2, Ole Miss has to play Tulane, arguably the best team in the group of 5 this year, and the game is in New Orleans. Then, in week 4, they have to play Alabama the week before they play us, and that Alabama game is on the road. So, if Ole Miss already has 2 losses, they have a ton of hype going into this year. Their fans are notoriously not that great when it comes to day games, to the point where Lane Kiffin has called them out. You want that LSU Ole Miss game to be played during the day because those students would rather party in the Grove than actually support their football team. So you want that game to be during the day, not only because of that, but also because that gets LSU back on the plane and home at a reasonable hour. That's part of the reason why I like the Mississippi State game being an 11 a.m. game as well. Also, the body clock is a very real thing in the SEC. So this is a deep cut PHL stat called just very simply the back-to-back road game conundrum. Okay, so for those that don't know, since 2019, there have been only 2 teams, excluding the 2020 Rona year, that have won back-to-back road games, okay, with no bye week. And that's 2019 LSU and 2022 Georgia. So 2 teams that are all-time great undefeated teams are the only 2 to have gone back-to-back on the road since 2019. There have been over 40 instances of this that have won both of the games. Now, I'm not going to go too much deeper. There's more data showing why this Missouri game is a trap game. We've already done a deep dive on this game. It is floating in the top right corner of your screen. I'll also attach it at the end of the video where it's just one simple click. You do not want this Missouri game to be played at 11 a.m. Also because they play a lot of 11 a.m. home games, and they're normally pretty good in them. So I know a lot of people are piling on Elijah Drinkowitz for some really asinine NIL quotes that he has shared recently about his brother and so on and so on. But the bottom line is he can coach. I do think he's pretty decent. Blake Baker obviously knows us pretty well. So I want to stay away from this game being played at 11 a.m. We can also deduct that this game is not going to be a 2:30 kickoff because Alabama and Texas A&M will more than likely be the CBS 2:30 kickoff. Something else, though, is Missouri does have a weak schedule. Their start to their season is one of the softest starts I've ever seen. South Dakota, Middle Tennessee State, a depleted Kansas State team, Memphis, and Vanderbilt before they play us. So this could, in theory, be a CBS 2:30. I doubt it. They're going to pick Alabama A&M. So you want this game being played at night. Alrighty, so we get to week 7, and this is where you guys might throw tomatoes at me. The Auburn-LSU game very well could be an 11 a.m. kickoff. Now, CBS, kind of a weird year for them. They're losing the rights, so on and so on and so on. But they get 2 doubleheaders every year, and this doubleheader will be an 11 a.m. and a 2:30 p.m. doubleheader. Normally, it's a 2:30 and 7 p.m. doubleheader. That's not until when we actually play Alabama. More on that in just a second. So, yes, this LSU-Auburn game very well could be an SEC doubleheader with an 11 a.m. kickoff. Now, there are multiple options for this doubleheader to where LSU Auburn could be the 2:30 part of the doubleheader, it just comes down to how the teams actually perform and what are the most compelling matchups. So, obviously, they could elect to play Tennessee and Texas A&M as part of an 11 a.m. doubleheader. They could also pick South Carolina, Florida, and I think the other matchup that they could play is Alabama, Arkansas as the first part of the 11 a.m. 2:30 doubleheader. Now, just looking at these matchups right here, once again, it's going to come down to how good LSU and Auburn and all these matchups actually play themselves out. If for some reason Texas A&M and Tennessee are undefeated at this point, this is going to be your CBS 2:30 game. So this one's probably the hardest to project because of the weirdness of the CBS having an 11 a.m. and a 2:30. So just have your fingers crossed at this point that this is not an 11 a.m. game. So now you get Army here. We're the only SEC team playing this week that doesn't have a Power 5 matchup. This could be an 11 a.m. game, but I do believe this one will be played at night. I honestly don't mind LSU Army being an 11 a.m. game because I do think it's good for there to be a home game every year in LSU that is a morning kickoff, because there are some people that just work graveyards during the weekends during the fall that can never actually go to a game. This game would be accessible to those people, and it does give stadium workers at least one game where they're not getting home at 3 and 4 in the morning. So I kind of hope this game is an 11 a.m. game, but to each their own. I do think this will be one of those 6 or even 8 p.m. Central start time. Alrighty, so as many of you know, there is a bye week in Week 9. Pretty much every year LSU has played Alabama. Since 2010, both teams have had a bye before they played each other. So we get this one in early November. This is another CBS doubleheader, their last of the season. They get the 2:30 kickoff, and then they get the primetime 7 p.m. kickoff, and this will 1 gazillion % be the LSU-Alabama game. So, it is true, the Alabama game this year will be at 7 p.m. Central, unless for some reason LSU or Alabama just isn't any good this year. Then they'll elect another game, but the likelihood of that happening is very little, if even just one of these teams are good, which both of them will be at this point in the season. LSU Alabama will for sure be a night kickoff. All right, LSU Florida, this is a tricky one, but this game will be played at night as well. Some of these other games just feel like 11 a.m. matchups, like an Arkansas and Auburn, if you will. So I do believe this game will be played at night, and of course it should be LSU versus Florida under the night sky. I mean, that's when most of the games have been played in this matchup. There have been a few CBS 2:30s, but I don't think Florida is really going to be that great this year. And I do think this game will be at night. Week 12 shows you why there needs to be major changes in the SEC scheduling format. This is the most brutal SEC week of the year. And this is why we need a 9-game conference schedule, because teams want to manipulate their schedule where for rivalry week they have a win. The only sexy matchup on this slate is Tennessee and Georgia. That will without a doubt be the 2:30 p.m. kickoff there. So as you can see, some of these CBS 2:30s are pretty easy to spot out, even if Tennessee isn't really that good this year, which they will be. But as you can see, a lot of 11 a.m. games are already scheduled. This LSU-Georgia State game very well could be even a 6 or even an 8 p.m. kickoff. So, and then we get here at the end, Alabama-Auburn, CBS 2:30, Iron Bowl. That's pretty no duh, right? Could LSU and Texas A&M, the Thanksgiving weekend holiday, be an 11 a.m. kick? No, for this reason. I don't think ESPN would want this matchup to compete against Michigan and Ohio State, which is also played on the same day. I think there are other matchups that they would elect to put at that time, and LSU Texas A&M is a relatively sexy matchup, so I think this game will be a 6 p.m. start time. A lot of LSU A&M games have been night kickoffs anyway, so there you go. So I expect this one to be at night. So this is what I would love the schedule to actually look like, and it is currently scrolling down your screen very slowly. So as you guys could see, the biggest thing that really stands out is that Missouri game. A 2:30 kickoff would be perfect, but I do think an 11 a.m. kickoff would be not so great, but even if there is one, I think we have a good enough team to get over that hump. Obviously, the Auburn game is likely going to be a day game. I know a lot of you hate that, but just based on what we see from the doubleheader situation, I think it could be very much an 11 a.m. kickoff, which would suck, especially considering there are a lot of 11 a.m. possibilities after the Mississippi State week. And I would be very shocked from Arkansas to Auburn that there aren't multiple 11 a.m. games mixed in there. Obviously, I like 11 a.m. home games for non-Power 5 teams, but still. Now, the Alabama game, 2:30, would be the perfect time for that one. And then the final 3 games, in a perfect world, all 3 of them are night games in Death Valley. So, comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. Which start time do you personally like the best? And just let me know. Okay, once again, schedule gymnastics. It's very difficult. All of this are just my best educated guesses because how the teams actually perform during the season heavily impacts how the games are actually divvied out, because all the networks want to do is put the most compelling matchups at the most compelling times. One thing I do think could be somewhat experimental this year from ESPN is them putting sexier matchups at the 11 a.m. slot for this reason. The Big Ten puts their best games oftentimes at 11 a.m., a.k.a. the big noon kickoff. And maybe ESPN wants to dig into those primetime noon kickoffs that the Big Ten has, or, I could see that. I'm not sure, though. It's hard to guess what the network executives want to actually do. So, once again, these are just my best educated guesses. It is Power Hour LSU. Boom! If you want that Missouri deep dive, boom! Also, some guy named Joe shared some cool things on PHL. That video's floating. I just hit the mic. That video's floating in your face right now as well. Let's go. Oh, yeah, and tonight, we're doing Buffy Chicken tonight.